Good evening. This is Kevin Kimble. Welcome to State of the Union, sponsored by the Culture Commission. I'm Kevin Kimble, again, your host with Financial Services Innovation Coalition and the Southern Christian Leadership Global Policy Initiative. Tonight we have a great show. We're featuring DeMark Liggins, the President and CEO of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and the General Counsel for Southern Christian Leadership Conference, Charles Brooks, and of course, Rob Slater, our founder and host and congressional candidate out of Houston, Texas. Welcome, gentlemen. Welcome. For the audience out there who was here last week and the week before, this is a weekly show. And when Rob first had this brainchild, it was that people need to hear more about what was going on and we need access. And so we're doing this. And tonight's show, I'm excited about this one. So I'm excited about all of them. I got to talk politics and policy all day, so I'm excited about all of them. But we're going to have fun with this. The SCLC, so whenever I have these conversations with people, and this is really starting to kind of bother me, so that's why I'm going to do this show. So every time I turn around, people say, well, Kevin, what's your solutions? I run problems. I said, what's your solutions? I don't have any solutions. And I'm like, yeah, plenty of solutions. I mean, I've got a whole policy agenda. Rob's got a policy agenda. I mean, everyone's got solutions. Mm-hmm. Charles got, I know the SCLC's got policy solutions. But what I realize what people are asking me is, Kevin, what can I do to make my life better without any problems, without any pain, without any spending any money, without spending any time? And the SCLC is a great example of, they are the history of the modern civil rights movement, right? And so I'm going to have these guys come on and talk about this. And DeMark, I'm going to throw it off to you. And you already know this question because I told you I was going to ask you, and this is the startup. You say when people ask you this question, the first thing you say to them, like when someone says, DeMark, life's gone to hell, Trump, this, that, and the other, this is bad. The Supreme Court, what can I do? And so the first thing you do now is say, well, can you give me $1,000? And you said
that's correct.
99.9% of the conversations.
Yeah, and I'll tell you where it came from. You're 100% correct. It started to hit my brain more after we saw the numbers for Project 2025, right? And you look at your opponent spending $22 million, not just for policy, but for implementation, right? And you realize that at some level, this is a resource game and it's not a money play. We have to be able to have resources for capacity, and no one's expecting some individual person to do it all, right? But we are saying, hey, if this is something you care about and you're asking us or anybody that's like us, what are you willing to give, right? And I'm like, if you can, everybody had to give $1,000 out your pocket, but would you even put it on social media that you're trying to raise $1,000 and see if you've got 10 friends to give $100 or 20 friends that will give 50, right? Because we got to have resources. Even today, I'm not on this platform, but I bet you good money, it's not a free platform. I bet you somebody charges for all of this, right? What we do costs resources and we need it.
Yeah, no. You know, and that's a jumping off point because the next phase of this is when we come to people with solutions, they're like, and Rob, you may one day be a member of Congress. So this is aimed at you, but it's going to be a question of Charles. When we go to members of Congress as the SCLC or Black leaders, you know, I've good fortune or misfortune of knowing lots of policy experts, people who are in the field working on everything from government contracting to housing, like just all over the place. And people don't take our solicitors seriously. And I'll give you my one personal example before I ask Charles this question. I told Black members of Congress 6 years ago that they should do a government shutdown to get voting rights. Right? The Voting Rights Act needed to be renewed. That was the only option they had. They didn't have the votes. They didn't have the court. That was the only place they had where their 50 or 60 votes could matter. They didn't do it. Fine. They didn't. Everyone was afraid. That's fine. But shoot for later, 7 of them already lost their seats through special redistricting. Rob, you're running for Congress because of the fact that they got rid of those seats. And if this Supreme Court case comes down, we're going to lose about 50 more or 40 more. Mm-hmm. I throw this to Charles. Before I ever got to this, Dr. Charles Steele, the former president, and you were at the Supreme Court talking to people during the Obama administration, and no one wanted to listen. Talk about that.
Yeah, so let's go back to the case. And it was actually under the Obama term, Holder versus Shelby County. And the Holder case was Shelby County, Alabama. And it was about what was the involvement of the justice system in making sure that these southern states didn't involve themselves in restricting Black voting rights, right? And the reason why, and just kind of delving way back into history, people act like the first group of civil rights acts was in the 60s. That's not true. The first group was post constitutional amendment 1880s, which led to Reconstruction. So the notion of Black folks getting the right to vote happened over 100 years ago, about 140, 150. Then we lost it a lot. Then in the 60s, it comes back. And then now we're at another precipice where it looks like we're losing again. But anyway, shortly back to your question. The notion that we were going to lose those rights was something raised by the SCLC at the time of the case. I think that was about 2014. That, hey, this stuff is going to start coming down the railroad tracks and you're going to lose the right. And look, we stood on our heads as an organization trying to get attention to what was going on, including, I believe, a radio host interviewed President Steele, and she openly scoffed at the notion that Blacks could lose their right to vote. And it's like, history says you already have. Like, it happened. Yeah. It's not like it's a guess that it could happen. It did happen. People forget the very first segregation case, she already had a first class ticket. Yeah. She was riding in first class and got to a certain point. And the guy was like, hey, you can't sit up here. She's like, I paid my money. Went to court and won. Mm-hmm. But then you had a Supreme Court that wasn't open to that. Mm-hmm. And so that's why these cases matter, what's coming up. And oh, by the way, and I spoke about it the last time you had me speak, you can't skirt out these kind of reasonings or rational decisions that are coming out of the court that deal with centralizing power without good rationales. Yeah. So you've got to understand, if you've ever been to a place or a part of the world where somebody has centralized power, they don't just go after minorities. They go after voices that they don't think are going to reflect what they want. And typically you pick this other, race, religion, ethnicity, whatever it is, and you other those people, but then you also go after the voices that you don't like, that either look like you, in your party, whatever. Like, you've got to clean house. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing those classic moves all happening at the same time. So I want to say, yes, we've got to be diligent in terms of these civil rights rulings. Don't take them out of the context of understanding that they're a part of a greater grouping of decisions that are being made that are against minority interests. And let me just be flat out, African-American interests. And that's why you have people discussing why Blacks can't be deported. Like, people need to understand, once the question gets asked, somebody's trying to do the workaround.
Someone's trying to figure it out, right?
Right. Right now, I was watching the news early this morning. Well, I don't know if you can't have a third term. The Supreme Court is real clear that you can't have a third term. And somebody says, oh, well, that's clear. 1881, which is 42 U.S.C. 1981, you cannot discriminate against Blacks in contract. That's the 1800s.
Yeah.
So what did you think happened after that? So this magic notion of it gets on the books and it's going to be enforced fairly, I don't know where people are getting that from. And that's why the notion of education is important. And I'm not talking about broader education outside the context of a school system, which they should cover it as well. I'm saying when you sit down socially and trying to figure out what's going on, there should be context for these kind of discussions, because this stuff isn't glamorous. This isn't cute. This isn't something that you want to see on the Real Housewives or whatever. This is about policy affecting people now, in the here and now. And a lot of people don't want to have it.
Well, that's why I'm so grateful to Rob. I mean, Rob's there's about 100 people in my universe that are just doing what needs to be done, right? And Rob, what did you? Because you're on the ground. I mean, you weren't in politics. You're a community activist. You're trying to help. How did you get to this place? What did I'm going to go back to some questions about what SCLC has done, because I want to make a point. But how did you get here? What's your vision for what we're trying to do? Why the Culture Network and these shows, and what did you see that was lacking?
Well, it was real simple. When I decided to run and jump into this race, it was myself, another candidate named Amanda Edwards, and the Honorable, late great Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. And I had so much pushback from my own Democratic Party, Black community, whatever the case may be. Like, hey, you should be a crossing guard first, or city council, or some. Well, no, because with my story and what I aim to do in the federal space is where the fight is. And I was lucky enough to have that foresight of what was to come. And so I stayed the course. And right before the primaries, we suspended our campaign and joined the Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee campaign and helped her win in that primary. Unfortunately, she had passed away. Then we got back out there and ran again. And then when we went against our former mayor, he won, then he passed away. So unprecedented. This is my third time running for the same seat in one cycle, which is unprecedented in the entire country. But I say to say is that during this time and this crash course of training, I've learned what not to do. I've learned of what the problem and issue was, because like President Liggins has said, it's the support and you need resources. And we as a community or a party has gotten so complacent and comfortable to where, with Obama winning the election, we thought Dr. King's dreams came true. Well, the dream may be delayed, but it won't be deferred, if that makes sense. And so we still need to do. We just gotten so comfortable to where we don't put the resources to where they need to be. We don't align properly. Everyone is working in silos. And so for the culture network and things like this, I was forced to build my own table. And coming out to DC and meeting you gentlemen and so many others across this nation to learn and bring those resources back to this city is what's gearing up for this fight right now. So we're not asking for permission, but we see what's happening. We have to meet the opposition where they're headed instead of where they're at. We as a community keep on being reactionary. We keep on being told what to think, how to vote, but we're not getting ahead to look down the line and to see what's coming. That's why we keep on getting our butts whooped. And so we're creating our own table. You don't have to tell me twice what all these buys and stock up of these different media outlets, that Black media is on a decline, different voices and resources. And so we're just trying to get ahead to provide a space and platform for everyone to come to and to start having these conversations like this.
Yeah, no. I'm gonna throw this quick statement or question back to both DeMark and to Charles, because this is something when I talk about people asking for solutions. So, SCLC has been at the forefront, and Charles and I were talking about this, DeMark. You brought the Fed Reserve governor from Atlanta to the convention, and he mentioned that the SCLC was the group that actually got the first piece of legislation dealing with the Fed Reserve. It was first civil rights group. Do a little both between the two of y'all, do a little bit of history, because there is this idea that we mean Black groups aren't doing stuff in this space, and that's not true. I know Charles has worked on bail reform. I know we're doing stuff. So throw this out there for the people in the audience, because again, everyone said, what are the solutions? And my point of making this, as we talk, is it's not so much that we aren't making solutions, that people just don't want to do the solutions that we suggest, and that's a different conversation. So
right. I'll address what you just talked about with bail reform. One of the things we were talking about with bail reform was whether or not cash bond was creating poverty courts, which poverty courts used to take place all over England, a few hundred years worth of history of that, and also in certain parts of other parts of the country right now, not this country, I'm sorry, the world, you can go to prison for debt. So the notion was that was debt-based. One of the solutions, because what I didn't want to do and the organization didn't want to do, is upper class communities can pay the money. And that was to make an exception for a community bond based upon the fact, hey, even when criminals are out on bond and they're in a certain area, they almost never leave their neighborhood, especially if they don't have the resources. So for those who are impoverished, to create somebody who has the responsibility of that person and have consequences to their license to be keeping up with them, preferably a community leader, to give those people an opportunity to continue to work and be productive and not detach them from society while they're waiting on a trial, right? So laid it out as a policy understanding, went to Maryland's Congressional State Black Caucus, went to New Jersey's, about how, and the question that I was asked multiple times was, who gave you this line of thought? It's like, what are you talking about? Like, I mean, somebody gave it to us. Like, well, no. Who told you to say? like, hey man, and I can tell you how many people said it. I said, hey, we came up with it on our own.
Mhm.
And then when you do that, people look around for
Well,
who gave you permission to speak. And I'm not talking about other people. I'm talking about people who
can
look
I?
like you on this thing,
It,
about who gave you permission to say that. And I'm
and
like,
Brooks,
yeah,
Brooks, let me now. I'm gonna just jump in and just on a piggyback of what he's talking about with bail reform. Obviously, like we said earlier, Kevin, we did that under Dr. Steele's leadership, right? Well, we were there. I was in Jersey, and to Brooks's point, people are walking up to him, asking him these various, who told you y'all could talk about this?
right.
Because the status quo hadn't gave permission for us to talk about it. Even though, as I say all the time, we are not the Southern Christian Reactionary Conference. We're the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. We're supposed to have vision for our communities and what we see. Anyway, it couldn't have been more than 4 or 5 weeks after we got back, back to, sent that to the office. Well, I think then Attorney General Holder came out and said something very similar in terms of keeping cash, like in terms of looking at some of the reforms and being more pragmatic about it, right? In a way that was very similar to what we had just discussed in New Jersey. But all of a sudden, because it was coming from the status quo, it was praised, right? And
Right.
I think that goes to the heart of what you were saying, is that a lot of times there's solutions out there. I would say we got bail reform. We've had stuff we've had stuff on all types of stuff, lending solutions, right? We've had conversations, like you said earlier on, shut down the government for Voting Rights Act. I remember being with Dr. Steele on the courthouse steps right after that, saying this is ridiculous. We've called for caucuses to at least vote as an actual caucus and not just be a caucus in theory, right? And you get called all these things. So like you get called a rabble rouser or whatever it may be. But to your overarching point, I think a lot of the solutions out there, I know we've put forth a lot. I've been at SCLC over 12, 13 years. Things that we've discussed have been solutions, right? Now, two things happen with the solutions. People look at you like, oh, that hasn't got permission. Or the other side of it is, oh, I really like that. But you get the community issue, which is, and you're like, well, hey, this is great. We've got to resource that. And then you run back into that. Okay, good luck raising money. And I don't want to be a broken record on that, but I cannot overstate. We got to stop expecting our oppressors to finance our freedom. It doesn't work.
Yeah, I agree with that. Rob, if you would get the car, I mean, I don't want to put this is out of campaign business. I don't want to put it in, but how is it that you've worked with elected officials, you've worked with people, you got two in the races that you're in Houston, you got all these current elected officials running for higher office. It doesn't seem to me that given the status of things that they've earned a passing grade to move on. Like, why is it that you think they don't take these ideas, or they have to be, someone else has to give them permission to take this stuff on? I mean, how does that work?
Well, I don't think that we don't hold them accountable enough, if that makes sense.
And,
Our community is bargaining and selling our vote for the low, for the cheap. I call it the Timu vote. It don't take a lot. Somebody's your soror or your frat brother or a lawyer, whatever association or something, or has got name ID. That's who we go for. And that's the unfortunate part. And right now, the community at hand needs leadership, not politicians. Back in the day in the 60s and 50s during the civil rights movement, you had real community civil rights leaders that was driving the force to create that political change. We don't have that as much these days. So we're dependent on politicians who's beholden to lobbyists and big money donors and other obligations to come in and save us. And the phrase goes, every kinfolk,
It's kinfolk and kinfolk.
Dr. Steele has said that, and it's so true. And unfortunately, these politicians, I mean, we see it all the time. Those that's even elected, they're just bargaining away from it. So the notion is that we know what the problem is. We're still talking about the issues. I said it last week. We're still talking about Obamacare. We're still talking about healthcare. Every cycle, we're still talking about the same old things. Let's talk about the future. Let's talk about innovation and tech and investment, financing, and things like that. And so we just got to hold these politicians more accountable to, deliver on their promises.
So, DeMark, either you or Charles, can you explain the Humphreys Act, the thing about the Fed Reserve? Just, I want to point out the sophistication at which SCLC has operated government, and I mean, so by my estimate, the SCLC is responsible for voting rights, civil rights, the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act, and this Humphreys Act, and a few other things. And not only that, went off
and don't forget HUD, and HUD was one of ours,
HUD,
and a GI Bill.
HUD
and let's not forget, Title IX grew out of the same RCRA of Title VII. So you don't get these women's rights that occurred in the 70s without the Civil Rights Acts that occurred in the 60s. Just,
yeah. And I'll have to add, and that's national stuff. We still have like a local victories. I live here in Georgia. Then President Lowry was one of the first people to push really, really hard for automatic registration of voters through the DMV, right? To make sure that because we have this, population growth, let's just make it easy for them. And so a lot of places that have, common sense locations for you to register to vote. We got those victories as well as the big, the quote unquote bigger or federalized victories.
Yeah. No, that's good. I mean, one day, Charles, I would test this. Both of y'all should write an op-ed. We just have a list. We just have a running list of all the things that SCL, because there is this idea that the civil rights movement kind of just not only with it, but that no one has any connection to like that these ideas that we're talking about here have value today and they could be built upon. And so, I mean, I know it sounds trite, but if you ask 100 people, hell, like I said, Charles and I were talking, we didn't know about that Humphreys thing until the meeting. And we're both almost 60. We had no idea that it happened. So I'm committed to making sure that legacy gets re-raised, because that leads to your credibility, right? When you talk about fundraising or talk about going to see people.
And I think it's important too, just not to remember it. I think it's important to remind people it's not an accident that you don't know, right? Like, how does such a large story happen? This is just large level subterfuge. It's not like to me, it's not an accidental adventure. It is rooted in, hey, let's make sure we celebrate the person, not the policy, even though we do want to celebrate the person. But the people in our case, like a Dr. King, he always painstakingly spoke about how he didn't want to be celebrated as an individual. I don't like to speak for him. I don't speak for other people. These are his words, his sentiment, right? He didn't want to be overly celebrated as an individual per se. He wanted to be celebrated for the policy and the purpose that he worked in, right? But if I can get you excited about the celebration, right, then you forget about the work. And I do think there's a reason these things have kind of gotten, quote unquote, lost inside of the chatter. So I do think it's important for us to remember. I also think it's really important to remind ourselves it's not an accident that you don't read about this stuff, because it's important to understand, particularly in the age of social media and the sophisticated way that the disinformation is going to hit. We have to be really conscious of the fact that as a culture and as a people, they are trying to purposely make us not remember truth.
Mm-hmm. So someone just put in this chat, what's the overall arching here? What is the overall objective to get things moving to support the vision? DeMark.
The overarching
the overall objective to get things moving to support the vision.
If I had to say anything, I say this is an all hands on deck adventure. The biggest thing, I think the brother talked about it earlier, is don't get stuck crying and complaining on camera, because it's not gonna do anything, right? Figure out what you want to do and where you can do that. I'm really big on that. What do you want for your house? Because that's going to affect your neighborhood, which is going to affect your community, which is going to affect your city. That's why you see us have an emphasis at 26. You'll see a big rollout with us having more chapters where people can physically touch it, because we understand that right now, I can't see who put it in the chat, so my apologies, but wherever you are, go find a chapter and go find the people who are interested and who have a vision for what should be, not just a complaint. I was just doing a speech last week at 2 HBCUs. I'm like, it's important to remember our HBCUs were started not because they were complaining about them, they had a vision for us. And so the answer all the time is, what do you want to do? And I mean, I know we say money a lot, but if it's not money, that's fine. If you don't have money, you got time, right? Do something where you.
Stop right there. I threw that to you personally because you were supposed to say give $1,000 and you didn't say that.
I was trying not to be a broken record about this. I was trying not to say, well, you can go to nationalsclc.org/donate, but I had this nice QR code. But no, I think everybody can give something, even if it's not. I will say this is super. If you give me a second, we're about to drop this on socials in a couple of days. Particularly right now, past the big policy stuff, you can always be a human being. We already know that a lot of our brothers and sisters are going to be without like physical stuff. We know SNAP is going to probably stop on the 1st. We know some of our brothers and sisters have been furloughed because they work for the federal government. Find out what it takes to sponsor a person for a week or a family for a week at your local food bank, and do that if you can't do anything.
Yeah,
Charles.
And also,
what are you say?
Yeah, I would say one of the key objectives that we're working on, and one of the biggest ones, is reaching out to the diaspora that's reaching back. There's a lot of African nations, and not just African nations, some of them in the Caribbean, and large population Black countries in South America that are reaching out to saying, hey, we understand that there's a lot going on. What can you do to help us? And people always tell me, well, man, we try to help ourselves. We can't help anybody else. That's not really true, in the sense of a lot of things that are very cheap to get in this country are very much so desired. In other words, we got a whole industry of just about hair that's coming from Asia that comes in this country. And by Asia, I mean the middle continent as well, India. So it's not impossible for you to get in that and economically change. But I also say this, and this is from my time when I was working on the Reverend Orange in Africa. I saw African hands pulling gold out of the ground. You walk around any of these major cities, you'll see Black people with gold around their neck. But we seem to take no interest in the transactions that occur between those two things, which makes no sense whatsoever. It's not rocket science. It's not hoodoo. It's not magic. You take it out, you beat it into a shape, and it becomes that necklace. It becomes that thing. There's nothing really special. So I'm just giving that as an example, not as a focus. And my point of it is to open up those diaspora relationships to things that we need every day. I think I talked to you, Kevin, about Burundi coffee. Fantastic coffee. You can get it directly from Africa. And in today's world, when people tell me, well, what's my cost? Like, wait a minute, hold up. It's a website. You can get a website and you can get a hold of the item. Shea butter comes from Africa, West Africa. You can get a hold of it if that's what you're going to do. So part of it is we're not going to neglect the economic side of the relationship, because I've seen so many people say, well, y'all talking about civil rights, why are you talking about money so much? Like, you haven't read any of Martin Luther King.
well, and plus we all know that poverty is the highest form of violence, right? Just super, I want to say this too. Something Brooks talks about a lot. Everybody who's listening, like, we can make stuff like this go viral. Let's make Robert's show go viral. Let's make this State of the Union go viral. Go find us on socials, right? The same way we drive up numbers for other stuff. The more eyeballs on our product, the more eyeballs on our presentations, right? Then the more that we know we can attract other dollars from advertising to exposure, etc. And that's something we can also do. Just share and get everybody to follow us at National SCLC, follow Robert, follow Kevin, and let's keep the momentum going.
Yeah, Robert, you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, President just hit the nail on the head. First and foremost, each and every one of us, as a community, we dwell on the problems, as we should, because it's feeling it, we feel it and it hurts. But we have to get engaged. And this is a fight where it's all hands on deck. It's like one of those old movies where our elders had grabbed a pitchfork, a shovel, a pot and pan. They came out in the street and they just start swinging. That's what type of moment that we're in right now. So, for instance, like with the Culture Commission Coalition, you go to the culturecommission.org, and we have a link that says get engaged. We were audacious enough to have a plan called Project 2026. And it is designed just to mitigate the devastation of Project 2025 of dealing with this redistricting. And with the help of Kevin and some great minds and some other economists, we looked at this redistrict map of Texas. I don't care what they redraw and try to cut this state up like pizza. We can actually flip it and win some of these seats back. Some of these seats has become more vulnerable. And so Project 2026 was designed to create a central hub, a command center, where we first and foremost need to get on the same damn page of messaging. That's where we're losing at. We're subjected to all these different shows and talking heads where we're told to think from different opinions. And a lot of that stuff, as I saw a comment, is going over our people's head, but no one is filling in the gap to bringing them from the message directly to the point of action. And so just get involved. I don't care if you sell t-shirts, if you're a cook, a chef, you do marketing. There's a place for you in this movement. There is a seat at the table for you. You just have to take the first step. Join the SCLC. Because for organizations, the godfather of organizations, to get involved in this fight, it takes resources. It takes membership. Same thing with the Culture Commission. But most important, the most valuable thing is just getting involved and getting engaged. And so my whole point is that, just like the president said, share, like, bring people to the table. And that's the point of this platform. We're not here to tell you what to think or how to feel. This is nonpartisan, straight facts. And last thing, Mr. Kevin, I want to tell everybody, encourage me as running for a congressional person. I tell your leaders, stop being afraid to say Black America. Stop being we tiptoe around the line to say that Black America, you say Black Lives Matter, they say all lives matter. The hell with that. It's time to put Black America on the table and start addressing the concerns, because we are beginning to shorten end of the stick from day one. We've been sitting on the back of the bus since Miss Rosa was sitting there, and we're tired and we're losing. Hell, we're getting blamed for things we didn't even have nothing to do with. So no matter what's going on, want to get the short end of the stick. So your politicians, your leaders need to stand up and have the fortitude to say Black America matters, as well as others. But what are you doing for Black America? What are you doing for the future? Like Mr. Brooks just said, what are you doing about our diaspora? We pay to think that Africa is such as bad content, all lies. Get involved, get engaged, and become knowledgeable. Don't look for politicians, look for true leaders in your community, and start right here on this show.
So I'm going to take a side. We got Marquita Brooks on the line, Apostle Marquita Brooks, and I asked her to come in. She's from Virginia. She's one of our people from Virginia, and she's just created so we've been organizing these policy engines around the country. We got one in New Jersey that came online earlier this year. Marquita's been working with us, and she's doing one. So Marquita, if you wouldn't take a few minutes just to talk about what you're doing, because I want the audience to hear so they can start thinking about wherever they are, wherever they live, if they could do something like this.
Thank you so much. Well, we are starting the Central Virginia Economic Initiative. And this is exactly what you're talking about, DeMark, in that we've got to bring together businesses and ministries and organizations. We've got to bring the community together. There are key stakeholders that do some very important things that don't talk to each other. But community problems are solved by us coming together. When we come together, we can catch people who fall through the cracks, like with this issue with SNAP and other issues that are coming. We can not only catch them, but actually benefit each other as we are supporting one another. We're talking about tax benefits. We're talking about initiatives being built up. We're talking about organizations growing. All of those things can occur when we work together.
Thanks. So when are you going to be up and running, Marquita?
Well, we are having a forum in November 16th, which is a Sunday, in Richmond, Virginia, actually at our location in Willow Lawn. And we're going to be bringing together the businesses and the ministries in the region to be kind of our kickoff. So we'll be starting next month, November 16th. And in the meantime, bringing people together so that we can actually start addressing some of these issues. We've been talking about it for a while. And now it's time to actually put some things together in this initiative.
Thanks. We got Kelly Michael Williams from DC. He's the ANC, one of the ANC commissioners. He's running for the delegate seat in DC for Congress. So I wanted him to come in and talk. But before that, I do want to say last week we had Martin Mason on, who does New Jersey. Marquita, you know Martin, and Robert, you'll know Martin because Marquita and Martin both came to Houston for the event we did in Acres Home. So one of the major things about this is, Mark, you said everyone's operating in silos, they aren't coming together. So it's been our big effort to put everything together and make sure everyone, not only did we know each other was working, but to prove the point that people need to listen. I say nothing disappoints me more than for people to ignore the history of SCLC and not to take that stuff seriously. Like, I mean, there's like the idea that there aren't that many people doing the important work when there are and have been and should be. Like the governor of Maryland vetoed a reparations bill. He's a Black governor of Maryland, and whether he did it or not, that was his choice to make. But he didn't reach out to any of the Black leaders in the state to ask them that question. Or when Joe Biden wanted to do menthol cigarette ban and didn't talk to any Black people about what kind of policy we should have, like for health. That was his healthcare agenda. Didn't ask us anything about the healthcare agenda. And so I've got to keep forcing us in front of their faces and requiring that they listen, because otherwise they'll keep making decisions for us, and we aren't strong enough, and we haven't been willing to hold them accountable. Michael, thanks for joining. One of the reasons I asked you to come on here was that I've been telling everyone we've got to get to the place where we take ourselves seriously and other people take us seriously. And you're running for that delegate, and you've been trying to do it. What's your view of what we're doing wrong and not getting people to take our initiatives more serious? Or how, if you get elected, what do we have to do to make sure you take our agenda seriously?
The Black agenda?
Well,
Can you hear me?
The issues, the Black agenda, things that we've been talking about.
Well, I'm all for being held accountable and having people, especially hold our elected officials accountable. I'm trying to do that now here in DC. I think hearing your intro about some of the other elected officials not doing the Biden and Governor Moore, I think what we have to do is look at where we put our money, dollars, and our support, and just force us to do what we have to do. I think you made it very clear when we talked that the government shutdown right now and the debt ceiling is not benefiting us as Black representatives and as the people. Black Americans. It's not benefiting us in terms of what we're voting on and what we're doing. So I think, quite honestly, to hold me accountable is let me know that if I don't do what I need to do, I'm going to get voted out of office. You're gonna work against me, and I think that's what everybody. I think we don't, as a constituency, really go after our incumbents in a manner that would make them feel like they need to be held accountable. I think we have I like to call it a political laziness or a sense where when we're in this Democratic bubble and our elected official is Democrat and the district is Democratic, we sort of get lulled to sleep. And that's what's happened here in DC. Voters got lulled to sleep thinking that the Republican agenda and the Republican Congress would never try to come and take over DC, while they've been talking about it for 20 years.
Right.
Just like they've been talking about dismantling Roe v. Wade and getting rid of the Department of Education. They've been talking about the Department of Education for 20 years that I can remember. Mm-hmm. And they've been talking about Roe v. Wade for at least 20 years that I can remember about getting rid of it. And so we sort of get in this bubble where we think, oh, well, they're not going to do that. Oh, that's not going to happen. And then when it happens, we look shocked. Like, oh, my God, they're really going to do it. Well, hell, that's what they said they were going to do. But when you speak up and you say something, don't you want people to take you serious? Don't you want people to take you for your word? Why in the hell do we sit back all the time and think that these people are not going to do what they say they're going to do when they do it every time? And so it's like, come on now.
Kevin, I'm really sorry. I just got to say this, brother. Not only did they talk about it, they fund it. Right? I cannot overstate this enough.
Exactly.
Like, I remember when Kevin was discussing GPI as a concept, right? And he's like, "Oh, they have lots of think tanks, right? And they have these initiatives that we're like discussing and talking about. They were putting money behind the effort to get rid of Roe v. Wade. They were putting money behind primaries for people who either liked or disliked the Department of Education. They were putting money. I mean, I know I'm like a one-trick pony, but I do think we talk. We don't resource, right? We don't resource. You can't challenge somebody in an office, particularly with the huge disparity in the two parties, the angst and the pain has to typically come from the primary. We saw that with the Tea Party in our lifetime. In the last 20 years, we watched the Tea Party move a party from chamber republicanisms to even more extreme than the Tea Party, right? But they did that inside the Republican primary system. They just walked into the system and financed people and said, well, hey, I don't care how wacky you think, how far right you think my positions are. I'm going to, for lack of a better word, swift boat you to death if you don't come to my position. And I just think we got to not just feel that way. I think it was Brooks who told me about the gentleman with affirmative action, right? And Brooks is like, hey, man, that dude was losing his cases for over 25 years. And his initiative wasn't losing money. Like they weren't like, oh, well, we gave you $1 yesterday and now it's tomorrow. And they were like, hey, man, I fundamentally agree with you. So here's my annual contribution. Keep up the good work. Right. And I just think and I'm sorry to jump in on your thing. I'm certainly not trying to star on your story, brother. My apologies. I just think it's important for us to say that they don't just talk about it, they resource it. And we have to get to that point.
And that's the thing that they do. They've been doing that for decades, and we don't do it. Not only have they been resourcing it for decades, they've been planning for decades. We plan every 2 and 4 year cycles. They plan for 10 and 20 and 40 years. And we're sitting back looking at what the next cycle is. And what really pisses me off sometimes about us is that when we have an opportunity to make a move, we get skittish and scared because we're so much concerned about what is going to be the backlash. What's going to happen? The GOP does not care about a backlash. They care about getting their policies through and, like you said, resourcing and funding them. And we sit back and say, okay, but if we do this, then this is going to happen. And what happens when they get in power? Well, don't let them get in power. Because if you would go ahead and do what you're supposed to do, they would not get in power. The Democratic voters
sometime anyway, right?
Right. The Democratic voters get pissed off because you don't do what you say you're going to do. So then they sit at home, and it's sort of a catch-22 because then they don't recognize and realize that then destroys and hurts us even more. And then we sit back. We lost 3 Supreme Court seats because we was jacking around, worrying about a procedure of an independent and a Democrat, as opposed to sitting there saying, okay, we didn't get what we wanted, but we still need to get this Supreme Court seat. Yeah. And now we're sitting back looking at the Supreme Court do exactly what we knew they were going to do, because they were always going to do that as soon as you put John Roberts in at Chief Justice.
I think we have even a problem in assuming that Black people are going to support a Democrat, because if you have that assumption, then that means Democrats only need to appeal to the emotions of African Americans rather than actually doing something that benefits communities. And so we've got to be at a place where we are putting our money where our mouth is, and we're holding everybody accountable because we are funding what we say we're going to do. How do we do that? We've got to shift completely because we're emotional. We put our money where our emotions are. The Black dollar is very powerful, but it goes to emotional. It's not going to things that make a difference in our community. And these are people who are struggling in other areas, but they will buy the new thing, the new shoes, the new phone. That's the emotional purchase. So we've got to make shifts, because those who came before us, they sacrificed. They knew what it meant to put the money where it's supposed to go, which is why we have an economic initiative coming in Central Virginia, because we can't even get to policy till we address the economics.
And I want, if I could jump in, it goes back to like what we're saying and what we're saying now. It's a messaging issue. One thing about this campaign down here, we took away talking about the issues, because there's no point in talking about issues if we don't have a democracy. So we made this mission about, this is about democracy versus a dictatorship. And that's something, it doesn't matter if you're Republican, Democrat, conservative, independent, whatever. We got to communicate a message to Americans and the people that put party aside. This may be your last Democratic election midterm. And I know Mr. Brooks said earlier that with the possibility what the Constitution said, but going back to what President Liggins said, when the man said he's going for a third term and this and that, I'm not in a position to take it lightly. And so we prepare for the worst case scenario and mobilize around that possibility, not to, get into the weeds on it, and come together and make this about a democracy versus dictatorship. And let me tell you what it means. When we talk about SNAP benefits or, taken away, it's not only affecting the African-American community or white community, whatever the case may be, it's also affecting the grocery stores. It's also affecting the businesses. And so we got to take that messaging to the powers that be to say, hey, you voted for that red hat, but it's affecting your behind too. So we need to take on the messages to really communicate the true economic impact and the effects of it. And you can't tell me it can't be resourced. How many of us went on trips, or you went on girl trips, and y'all went in to split that all-inclusive resort or that cabin or that Airbnb to do that trip, right? You pitched in for a great time. Pitch in, come together for a great cause, and let's get it. We got to get resourced, though.
But let me ask you a question, Robert, because I agree with you on that. But that was the message last time for the presidential election, and it didn't resonate. And I will probably agree with you that messaging was probably a problem there. But you have folks who do not think or believe that it bothers them or it's impacting them. They keep talking about that this guy his economy or his economic plans are benefiting them because they have not realized that they don't. And I agree that Democrats never have a good message. Only two people I know in my lifetime have had a good message, and that was Clinton and Obama. The bridge to the 21st century made sense. It was easy. Yes, we can was simple. It was easy. It made sense, right? People were able to grab onto that and use it. But I don't think that the people really recognize what's happening. They're complaining about it, but it still hasn't resonated yet. And I think that messaging is tough to get them to understand that Republicans still believe that they're best on the economy. And they have not been good on the economy since 1953. They have sent us into a recession or job loss or high interest rate since 1953. And yet they keep saying this message that we're great on the economy. And Democrats have not taken that from them yet. And people still keep voting for them, thinking that they're going to get something from them. They send us into this every single time. Trump did it just 4 years before, and it has not resonated. How do you get them to actually now believe it? Because I agree to a certain extent, even now, that because we're in DC and the National Guard and everybody's running around, so now they're conscious that statehood matters. They're conscious that home rule matters. But before that, it was like, we never have to worry about it. We don't have a vote, but it's okay. Now it's like, oh my God, this is really important. How do you message that?
So
if I can, real quick, let me
DeMark, do you have to go or can you stay? I know if you have to go, I'll let you make a statement.
No, I got to pull off right at 9, but go ahead. Unless you about to talk for 7 minutes, I don't think he's gonna go that long.
So we'll be all right. I think we'll be all right.
Yeah, no, 30 seconds. I agree to the notion that was maybe the message the last time, but I kind of want to push back on it to say that, yes, we had some warnings about this president on top of their own proposed Heritage Foundation Project 2025. But what we mismessaged is that, Kamala Harris was a great candidate in my eyes. But I will boldly enough say that we had some flaws in the messaging. And I get it that it wasn't enough time and all of this and that. We should have been more talking about what we're going to do, connected to the people and talking about those problems. But I think also we got kind of beat up on the notion this was possibly the first African-American woman. This was the first female. And so now we're voting kind of on emotion in that first, which is great. Versus Obama was the same, but Obama did instill some type of hope of, yes, we can. It was a uniting of a force, if you will. And so my whole point is that in this time, we have to figure out how to strike that chord of uniting people to not be disturbed by the distractions and really focus on the heart of the people and by mobilizing and coming together.
DeMark, go ahead.
Yeah, and I just want to say to Robert's point, and I think the question is a fantastic question. One of the things we saw with President Obama that I would probably put in his positive ledger, right, is that he came in as an outsider. So when his messages first started hitting, people didn't see him as part of the party apparatus. In fact, they kind of watched the party fight against him. So to a large degree, his candidacy felt like it was part of fighting the system in and of itself, right? And I say that to say, a lot of what we have to do, I know for myself on the social justice side of the ledger, I think it's important that we are not seen as pawns of the party, because you're not going to get to the people because they don't respect you. They get tired of feeling like we're telling them what the party wants to say. They want us to tell the party what the people say, right? And we've got to be very, very conscious to make sure that we appear that way. Fortunately, we live in this very hyper-partisan environment. And so to the sister's point, I don't think it's so much about us trying to be part of one party or the next. One party just very much is almost dead set and never appearing to be allied with us at all for any stretch. I mean, they are, as Dr. Steele would say, you know, one party want to take you, the other one just want to take you for granted, right? But I do think that, part of that message is making sure that when we're bringing up these points, they are seen as our vision for our communities, and we're just working with whomever's going to help us get there. To her point about economics in Central Virginia, right? If you're focused on economics in Central Virginia and you're seen that way, or as you'll be seen that way, whatever politicians are helping you do that, yay for them. Whatever politicians are not helping you do that, boo to them, right? And I think it's just real important. I mean, I think policies are important. Obviously, we're SCLC, and voting is, you know, in our DNA, and I applaud the two brothers, and I applaud anybody who chooses to represent and participate actual people and not the profit of corporations in DC, right? So thank you guys for your effort. But I just think it's really important that we remind ourselves that the more people see us as party, we can tell the truth. And what we learned in the last election, they won't listen to us because they'll just see us as mouthpieces of the party. And we need to be mouthpieces for the people.
Exactly. What I would say to you is not just boo to those who don't meet the needs of the community, but woe unto them. Not only do we need to hold them accountable, but we need to let them know that we will pull you off of your pedestal. And
that's right.
Even-handed, no matter which party you're in, then the people will know we are for the people. It's about what's happening in the community, not about party politics or platforms.
Yeah.
So
I like that.
Are there any questions?
Exactly.
Anybody in the audience have questions?
So what do we do? What can we do?
Well, I want to say something that you guys said. I want to say talk a little. There's a frame of reference about from Obama's standpoint. The one thing that I think DeMark hit it on the head. He was seen as an outsider, so people had a lot of hope in him because people forget he won Idaho, he won Indiana, Iowa, Ohio, and I think he won West Virginia. I think he won West Virginia too.
Won West Virginia,
North Carolina.
Yeah, and so he was truly the first cross-racial. I mean, he had really translated, because those are states you can't win with just black votes. So he actually did a good, but he left. He got co-opted by the system. The way kind of Trump's having trouble because he got co-opted on the Epstein stuff. Like he can't release the Epstein, so half his parties pissed off at him for that stuff. And that's something that so we don't do our role. We've been talking here about making sure that our voices are taken seriously, and that we hold the 60 while we still have them, Black members of Congress. And I start with them because they owe SCLC. They are here because of SCLC, right? I mean, before the 1992 cycle, after all those cases got settled, Charles, you know better than I know, but they got settled. There were only 20 members of the Black Caucus in the 1992. So that big explosion happened because of the results of the Section 2 and Section 5 voting rights cases. So we have to start with that. So we have to start with them. Then we can move to the Hispanics because they piggyback on those receipts all got drafted. And then we go to the others. So I think I definitely, I'm committed to this, but the reason why I asked DeMark and Charles to come on, the SCLC legacy, what they've done is huge and needs to be talked about, because it is important that we understand what they have done, but what can be done. And so that's and like what Marquise, I mean, all you guys are, like I said, I'm very lucky I get to speak, lucky or unlucky, I don't know, but to speak to people all day long who are doing things all over the country, trying to make the world a better place. So I want to keep using this platform that Rob's given me to work on that.
Well, I've got a role. I'm going to say we're probably the unlucky ones because we have to talk to you, Kevin. No,
don't call me. Have a bad day.
Hey. If I can count on anybody to sit there and push me, it'll be Kevin all the time. But but I do have to run. I just want to say thank you to everybody. I do hate to pull off. I actually going to be on some on the West Coast. So it's only 6 o'clock out there. But I just want to say thank you. I appreciate it, Kevin, always. Thank you, everybody on the panel. Brooks, of course. And I will chat with you guys later. I appreciate everyone.
Mark, we gotta get you down to Houston too, man.
Take care.
You and Charles.
Hey, man, I told you, man. I got a nephew in Houston, so that's you said nothing to me, man. I gotta go see my little buddy anyway.
Calm down.
All right, man. See you later.
All right.
Take care, DeMark.
All right, guys. If you guys have any closing arguments or closing statements, whatever, we can do them, and we can get everybody out of here. And just there's questions in the audience. Otherwise, this was great. Thank you guys for sharing.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, man. Just keep on engaged, man. Next week, every Monday, right, Mr.
Every Monday, 8 o'clock.
Right here, State of the Union. This gentleman bring on some great guests, real dialogue. If you guys are tuning in right now, please like and share. Bring a friend next time, because this is where it starts. Real information. These guys are powerhouses. These are the experts. And so being in a space like this to get this information firsthand, unbiased, and we got strong sisters like Miss Brooke on as well. So just bring somebody next time, man. We do this every single week. It's a revolution. Yes, I said it, and I meant it, and I stand on it. So let's get it.
Thank you, guys.
I want to thank you too, Kevin. Appreciate you calling me. Apologize for being late. I had my call tonight, my meeting for ANC Commission tonight. But certainly, if you're in the DC metro area, look us up, Kelly Michael for DC. Go to our website, KELLYMIKEL4DC.com. And we need your vote. We need your support. Donate. And let's do a listening session. Let's talk. Let's continue this type of dialogue. Because if we don't talk, politicians don't listen. And my job is to listen to you as your representative. So what I want to make sure that we do is listen to what you have to say, so that we can make sure we can get out there and deal with the healthcare issue, deal with the housing issue, affordability, and deal with home rule right here in the district. Because without those, we can't do anything. Without healthcare, you don't have any dignity. Without housing, you have no stability. And without home rule, you have no autonomy. So we have to make sure we can take care of all three of those right here, not only just like what Reverend Mr. Slater said in Houston, but across this country. We need to be able to put this baby to bed, as they say, because this fool is about to do some crazy stuff, tearing down the White House. I just, you cannot make this stuff up. Okay, you cannot make this stuff up. You're tearing down the White House because you want to build a ballroom. I mean, come on now. Okay, and people are standing around watching. Yeah.
I don't even know. That was he is on his own. He's on his own path.
Right, and people are they're being lulled to sleep because it's so much and so often. Yeah. I think Slater said it right, is that we have to get out there and get these people to recognize and understand, especially even those that voted for his behind, that what, you made a mistake. Don't do it again, because you already made it twice. Right, you probably made it 3 times because it just didn't work in 2020.
Yeah. And Kelly, real quick, do you guys have a special election or anything, or any election going on this November in DC area?
Not in DC, just in Virginia. Just in Virginia, is the special election, but in DC, we don't have any specials coming up right now.
Do you know what's the early voting turnout? Anything looking like that? Y'all got voter apathy, or is it strong?
We do. We have huge voter apathy. We have 700,000 residents in DC. And I think I shared this when we had the panel discussion with Kevin, and Ward 7 and 8, where you have predominantly African-American voters. We have over 95,000 residents. In my ward, it's about 112,000 now. But we only had 6,000 people vote in a recent special election. We had 6,000 people voting. In the actual general election, we only had 7,000 people voting. And 40,000 of them are registered to vote, but we still got 110,000 in the ward. Mm-hmm. So we have not only apathy in terms of just registering to vote, we have even greater apathy in terms of voting. We get less than 10% of the people actually even voting. And they wonder why we only have one grocery store, why we don't have, economic base in our ward, is because people aren't willing to stand up, vote, speak up, and say something. We have a lot of advocacy, if you will, but that advocacy is not turning into economic power to the point that we need it. And that's one thing that I'm about to really put my foot in, is that we have some federal land that's coming online that they want to put more houses on. And I'm just like, absolutely not. We're not putting any more housing out there that's quote unquote affordable. That's not for us to be able to raise ourselves up. So you're coming from an apartment to a condo to a townhouse to a single family. We're not doing that. So we're just building apartment buildings so people can basically come in and gentrify and be able to live, but they're not affordable. They're talking about being affordable, but they're not affordable.
Affordable is a
And
relative
so
term.
we're going to do that. Right. It's a relative term. And so we have to do something about that. And I'm hoping to change the apathy, because I am an outsider. I'm not a part of the status quo. And so it's one of those things where being able to help people understand that our platform and our pillars are coming from life experiences. They're coming from lived experiences, from being homeless, taking care of my mother, having to deal with healthcare and Medicaid and Medicare, having to deal with the system that, is broken, and being able to actually see it firsthand and recognize and understand it as a single father trying to, navigate and move through this system. We gotta let them know. This is what they gotta do.
I'm sorry, Mr. Q. We're not taking over your show.
No. You know what? I'm listening. I mean, this
when
is
I
good.
met Mr. Kelly in DC, I mean, literally, it's like my twin. He's a chef, got a restaurant. I'm a chef, got a restaurant. Single father, taking care of our mothers, both running for Congress. And for outsiders like that with the story, I'm grateful for God, because I think it's just the time. As crazy as it sounds, and I'm not too thrown off, man. I always say we're the genesis of transformation. I'm not afraid of the destruction that's happening. I believe that, what God is allowing, this is clearing some things away that wasn't designed for us in the first place. And so when the new table is set, you want to make sure that who's at that table. But we as a community keep on putting in the same recycled politician with no policy,
Right.
no promises, and nothing. And so down here in Houston, I mean, we went over almost 300 days without a representative. And that big tax bill that he passed by what? One vote. This District 18 down in Houston didn't have that vote. That's where that vote came from. And I think we're down. Population versus vote is under 1%. We have a net a deficit of 135,000 votes this time last cycle around. It is horrendous that nobody's voting, because there's no excitement. It's politics as normal, the same establishment politics, and nobody's buying it now, man. They're tired. And so
nothing's happening. I think too, you may do a little research on this, but two things, and I asked this at a bunch of different places. Most people, to Marquita's point, can't tell you that it's better for them to have a Democrat or Republican elected official. I mean, I was at the SCLC and asked this question, and nobody raised their hand, right? And I think, there are a couple of data points you always go through, but it takes $129,000 a year to live comfortably as a single person in most big cities in America. So I'm between $100,000 and $130,000. The median income in those cities is about $80,000. That means the average person makes $40,000 less than it takes to live comfortably in their city. That means 80% of the people in that city make less than they need to be comfortable. So it gets really hard for them to to do whatever they need to. I mean, the car notes are $1,000. Everyone's max. So I think part of that frustration, part of that apathy is no one's telling them what they're going to do to make a difference, right? No one has, like Margaret Taylor Greene's complaining her kids can't buy houses, right? Her grown kids can't buy houses. They can't. Everyone's living at home. So there's a lot of the system's not working. So people are dropping out of the system. And I think that's where you guys have to come in and, tell them, like, what are you going to do? Medicare, so food stamps and public housing aren't going to fix people's problems. Those are problems, not solutions, right? The government shut down. Black contractors, Marquita, we talked about, black contractors get less than 1% of government contracts. So it's not hurting us that the government shut down. I mean, most people you talk, I asked around the city, I asked you, Kelly, you're in DC. Several people who actually work for the government, you don't know you haven't noticed the government's been shut down. So I think that, as you, Robert, you think about that, people they don't see the value. And I mean, I think, and they've earned that right, because life's in the last, when I first started doing this project in like 2012, the 60% of the population didn't have enough money for a $400 emergency. Now that number is like $2,500. So like, so about 80% don't have 20. I mean, like the numbers are growing and the income's shrinking, and they're just they're frustrated, and no one know, like, so they don't care that Trump's tearing the White House down because most of them can't afford to go see the White House. I mean, people are borrowing money.
I think you're right with that. I think you're right with that, Kevin. And I get torn with that because on the one hand, unfortunately, a lot of those who have come before Robert and I have made those promises and didn't keep them. Maybe couldn't have kept them, but didn't come clean of the fact that I couldn't do it.
Right.
I wanted to, but couldn't, but they made excuses for it. So it created the apathy. But then the second part of me is like, when your life depends on something, I should not have to try to motivate you to save your life.
But I guess the question you're asking,
and so it's a catch-22 for me. And I know that sounds harsh, but it's one of those things where we have to, as the elected officials that are trying to make government better and make it work for our community, we have to be honest about doing that and come with the solutions and resources to do that. And when we can't, be man or woman enough to say, you know what, I was not able to do that. I'm going to keep trying to do that. Or if there's a legitimate reason why you couldn't, because you didn't have the votes, you couldn't get it passed, just say that. I couldn't get it passed. Because I think when we don't use that or don't come clean, then it sort of snowballs and it creates that continued apathy of like, well, you said. And then once they get in there and they're stuck and they can't, no one can actually challenge them because of the money. It's hard to challenge an incumbent in any level. So once they get in there, you can't challenge them because you can't get the apparatus behind you to help you, fund. So now the people say, well, he's going to win anyway. She's going to win anyway. They're going to do what they want to do anyway. And then, you see a decline. We have 700,000, but we only have 300,000 people registered to vote in the whole city.
Yeah.
So 400,000 people are not registered to Robert's point.
But let's go back to this, the whole thing about the debt ceiling stuff. And this is, and you're right. The members didn't. It may be that 60 black members of Congress is too many. It may be that that's just the wrong allocation of resources in terms of where black voters are. They need to be more black voters and more districts have white members. So I don't know the answer to this question, but those 60 members, every time they had a chance to hold up the government to get stuff in the bill for their people, they capitulated, right? And I think that is something that is we just kind of gloss over that. I mean, like every time nobody wanted to be Marjorie Taylor Greene and shut down the government in order to get voting rights, in order to get, job contracted. We could have, the Biden's bill, $1 trillion infrastructure bill, they could have held that bill up until it had, 30% set aside. I mean, no one ever did that. And so I think that's what so even business people don't see in Marquita, before, she'll tell you she didn't do politics really before this. She got involved because no one saw the value. No one could see how they could influence the process unless you're, even most high wealth black people don't do politics.
All right, I just say this. You said you got to go?
Yeah, I gotta go.
Oh no, thanks, Charles. Sorry, Charles. No. But please that. Please send us a list of all those things that SCLC has done, because that was a good list, and I think people I want to publish that.
Okay, I got you. The act.
All right. And on your phone call, Mr. Brooks, out of here, and I'm about to wrap up too, guys.
It's late. We're over time. Marquita,
right.
you can take us. You can take us out.
Yeah.
I was just going to, especially with you guys running, that everybody expects more from black politicians than anyone else. And it's harder for black politicians to get things done. That's just the reality. What we have to do is expect everybody to take care of our community. And you guys are going to have to be honest about the things that you hit, the challenges that you hit up against, bring the community into that.
Exactly.
So they're actually able to support you in it, because people don't see what happens behind closed doors, but they will be expecting more from you. And that's
right.
that's something that you just got to kind of walk in that truth, and then hold other people to that truth as well. So, as you guys can, I'm a business owner, contractor, coach. I'm also a ministry leader. And so I actually represent a few different sectors. And in all of those situations, from all of those sectors, we are still looking at the political leaders. And so it's time for us to step up and actually do the part that we have to do. This is a nation of people. It's not a nation of politicians. And so when we can come together and actually do what we're supposed to do at the grassroots level, then we can support you guys in doing what you need to do or replace you.
All right, guys.
That's right. That's right.
Thank y'all.
All right.
All right.
Good night,
I agree,
everybody.
Marquita.
See you next week, man.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
man. See you.
Next week.